Some things grow quietly in the corners of life. No one notices. No one talks about them. But they grow inside slowly. And one day when you look in the mirror, you realize your smile has been replaced by silence. Depression? When people hear this word, they usually think of the young, those with stress, busy work life, the exhausting pace of the city. But very few talk about this truth. Depression comes most often after the age of 65. It comes to the quietest lives, to the most lonely hearts, to those who silently whisper, "Who needs me anymore?" And do you know what's the saddest part? This kind of depression usually goes unnoticed, because after 65, depression is silent. It doesn't scream, it doesn't cry, it just slowly takes something away from deep inside you. The things that once gave you joy start to feel meaningless. Getting out of bed in the morning becomes harder. The phone rings less often, the house grows quieter, and your heart feels heavier, but there's no one to tell. That's why today we are going to talk about something very important here. There are thousands, even millions of people who fall into depression after the age of 65. And most of them feel lonely, incomplete, forgotten. But I want you to know this. You are not the only one feeling these things, and you do not have to get lost in this silence. Today we are going to talk about the 5 most silent causes of depression after 65. And maybe some of these reasons will sound very familiar to your own life, quietly growing in the background. But first you need to know this. Getting older is not a loss, not a punishment, not loneliness. Sometimes it's just a sign from our heart that it needs something new. If you're ready, let's begin together and uncover the 5 most silent causes behind depression after 65. 1. Losing purpose. The silent trigger of depression. After 65. Do you know what is the greatest force that keeps a person standing in life? The reason that gets you out of bed in the morning. A purpose that keeps your mind busy during the day. Being someone who is needed. Being someone who is awaited. But after the age of 65, after retirement, many people slowly start to lose this power. Because for years, you lived within a routine. You woke up every morning and went to work. You provided for your family. You talked to people. Maybe you were a boss, maybe an employee, but you had a role in life. Then one day that role ends. No one calls anymore. No one checks in. No one says, "It wouldn't be the same without you." And this is where the most dangerous form of depression begins. There's a quiet question a person starts to ask themselves. What am I useful for now? And if that question cannot find an answer, it quietly destroys a person from the inside. Many studies in America show that the majority of people suffering from depression after the age of 65 share a common statement. I feel useless now. People used to need me. Now I'm just passing the time. But this thought is the biggest lie of depression, because a person's worth is not measured only by what they do. But our minds have been taught that for years. Especially in men, this feeling is experienced even more sharply. Someone who has been the head of the family for years suddenly finds himself having breakfast in silence, spending the entire day in the same room, and returning to the same silence in the evening. Women experience this similarly, but in a different way. Years spent at home, times full of children. When the children grow up and leave, the hallways of the house empty out. The kitchen grows quieter. The laughter fades away, and this emptiness slowly turns into an inner emptiness. Why is this feeling so silent? Because no one talks about it. Because society says, "Isn't it great? You're retired. You can relax." But no one asks, are you really relaxed? Are you really happy? Is there something that excites you when you wake up in the morning? In one study, 72% of people over 65 who experience depression said this sentence: "I'm just trying to get from morning to night." This is what losing a sense of purpose feels like. You can't see it, but it tires the soul. It drains life energy. It erases smiles. Is there a solution? Of course there is, but the solution isn't in big things. Sometimes the solution lies in the tiniest details. An activity that excites you during the day. A routine that makes you feel good. Gardening, writing a book, organizing old memories, talking with other seniors, volunteering for something. And most importantly, reminding yourself of this question every day. I am still valuable. I am still here. I am still someone to love and be loved. Life is not just about working and producing. Sometimes life is simply watching a sunset, finding peace in the steam of a cup of tea, sharing a memory, asking someone how they're doing. And remember, you may have lost your sense of purpose, but your life's value is still right there with you. 2. Isolation and loneliness are stronger than any illness. Humans are far more social beings than we realize, and loneliness is often more dangerous than any illness, especially after the age of 65. This loneliness quietly starts to settle into every corner of life. There used to be voices at the breakfast table. Someone would knock on the door, the phone would ring, conversations would go on. Sometimes laughter, sometimes arguments, sometimes just the comfort of presence. But after 65, those sounds begin to fade. Friends slowly disappear from life. Companions either fall ill, move away, or say goodbye to this world. And then that moment comes, you wake up one morning, and you realize there are very few people left that you can call. This is how loneliness begins, not with noise, not suddenly, slowly, quietly, but its impact is enormous on the inside. A study found that the risk of depression triples among people over 65 who live alone, and the rates of heart attacks, strokes, and Alzheimer's disease significantly increase among seniors living in isolation, because the human soul is not designed to fight loneliness. Without conversation, without voices, without touch, without hugs, without love, life slows down, and the soul slowly shrinks. This situation is even more common in countries like the USA, Canada, Australia, and the UK, because people are busy. Children live far away. Everyone is caught up in their own lives. Mothers and fathers, grandmothers and grandfathers sit quietly in their homes, counting the days. And sometimes what they need most is simply the sound of a phone ringing. A simple, hello, how are you? I thought about you today. I love you. But while life speeds up, seniors slow down, and that distance keeps growing. What an elderly mother, father, or grandparent fears most is not dying alone, but living alone while still alive. And do you know what the saddest part is? People start getting used to loneliness. The more they get used to it, the more they withdraw. And once they withdraw, they start to see being called, being asked about, or being loved as distant luxuries. But getting used to loneliness is not a solution. Getting used to it is something that slowly eats away at the soul. In one study, elderly participants were asked, "What do you miss most in life?" Most answers were simple. Talking, drinking coffee together, laughing together. Not expensive gifts, not great achievements, just a voice, just a conversation. That's why loneliness is the greatest source of depression. And never forget, feeling lonely is not your destiny. It's a wall that must be broken. Yes, maybe there aren't as many people around you as there used to be. Maybe your children live far away. Maybe your grandchildren are busy. But it's never too late to meet new people. Sometimes it's saying hello to a neighbor. Sometimes it's going to a little cafe nearby. Sometimes it's joining an online community. And most importantly, remembering that you are not alone. Because the one thing a human being needs most in this world is to have someone who sees them. And I am here, as someone who sees you, hears you, and understands your story. 3. The pain of being forgotten by family and children. There are some pains in life that neither medicine nor time can heal, because these pains come from the deepest part of the heart. They are among the quietest, most invisible, but also the heaviest feelings of all. Being forgotten by family. This is a wound that silently grows in the hearts of so many people after the age of 65. Maybe they can't say it out loud. Maybe they don't show it to anyone. But in the middle of the night, sitting alone, that pain quietly reminds itself from the very center of the heart. Everything used to be so busy. The children were small. The sound of little footsteps running through the house. Laughter, questions, requests. Sentences that began with mom, dad, grandpa, grandma. Life was loud. It was crowded. Then time passed. The children grew up. They built their own lives. Moved to other cities, even other countries. Maybe they called. Maybe they visited. Maybe they remembered on special occasions. But that old intensity, that old need, it disappeared. And then the moment comes. You start to ask yourself, am I still important in their lives? When the phone doesn't ring, when there's no knock at the door, when no message comes, when there are no visits, a silence starts to grow inside you that you can't quite describe. And that silence is such a thing. It makes you feel lonely even in a crowd. Maybe the children are busy. Maybe life is rushing them around. Maybe they truly can't find the time. But the human heart doesn't work with logic. It works with emotion. And once the feeling of being forgotten settles in, it slowly starts to consume you from the inside. What hurts many elderly people the most is not physical loneliness, but emotional loneliness, not being remembered, not being asked about, not being awaited. Because aging is not just a physical process, it's also a process of becoming invisible. And this invisibility, over time, makes a person feel worthless. But here's something very important. This situation is not your fault. And it is definitely not your destiny. Maybe your children are busy. Maybe the flow of life has sped up. But you are still very valuable in their lives. Maybe they are not fully aware. Maybe life is pulling them in many directions. But you are worthy of being remembered, being loved, being called and cared for. Sometimes calling your children can feel like a matter of pride. But remember this. Life is short. Sometimes reaching out yourself is the best solution instead of waiting. A simple phone call, a little message, saying I miss you, asking how are you, and if your children are far away. If your grandchildren are busy, it is still in your hands to build new connections within life. The strongest way to fight the feeling of being forgotten is to remind others of yourself. Your life, your experiences, your presence are incredibly valuable. You are not just a part of the past. Your story is still being written. You can still leave marks in someone's life. And never forget, there is someone here who remembers you. If you are watching this video, know that your existence matters. Your story is precious. Your heart is not invisible. You are not just a name, an age, a number in this world. You are a person who deserves to be remembered. And I see you. I hear you, and I understand you. 4. Health problems that quietly feed depression. There are some things in life that may seem small from the outside, but inside a person they create deep wounds, and health problems are exactly like this. After the age of 65, the body changes. The strength, speed, and endurance you were once used to slowly begin to fade. Things you once did without thinking now require effort. Climbing stairs, taking long walks, even sometimes just getting out of bed in the morning becomes difficult. And this change doesn't only exhaust the body, it wears down the soul as well, because every human being wants to trust their body, to feel their existence through their strength, their movement, their health. But when health problems begin, that trust slowly starts to weaken. Small aches and pains here and there, fatigue that never goes away, sleepless nights, waking up feeling unrested, loss of appetite, digestive problems, vision and hearing difficulties. These are not just physical issues. They carry an emotional burden too. Because when a person gets sick, a thought begins to echo in their mind. I guess I'm not who I used to be anymore. And this thought is one of the strongest fuels for depression. Many elderly people distance themselves from social life because of health problems, because moving becomes difficult, because they don't want to bother others, because they feel like their old joy is gone. And over time, this situation turns into a vicious cycle. The more they get sick, the more isolated they feel. The more isolated they feel, the worse they feel emotionally. And the worse they feel, the more their physical health declines. This silent cycle, if not noticed, can slowly pull a person's soul into a completely different place over the years. According to a study conducted in the United States, health problems double the risk of depression in people over 65. Especially in those living with chronic pain, constantly using medication, or whose mobility has decreased, this risk is much higher because living with constant pain. Struggling with discomfort every day, it exhausts the soul as well. But here is what's important. Experiencing health problems does not mean you are worthless or powerless. Every human body changes over time, and this is a very natural process. What matters most is how you treat yourself during this process. Not neglecting your health, not skipping medical checkups, not giving up on moving, not withdrawing from social life, and most importantly, being kind to yourself. Remember, even if your body fails you sometimes, your spirit can still be incredibly strong. Sometimes, small steps lead to big changes in life. Daily walks, breathing exercises, light workouts, healthy nutrition, and above all, staying connected with people. You are not just your body. Your worth is not determined by your pain, your illnesses, or your age. Your worth is determined by your experiences, your lessons, your feelings, and the meaning you add to life. Health problems can quietly feed depression. But remember, hope nourishes the soul just as powerfully. And as long as you don't lose hope, you can regain your strength at any stage of life. 5. The fear of future and losing control. As we age, certain fears begin to quietly grow inside us. Maybe they don't show from the outside. Maybe we never say them out loud. But when you lie down at night in those silent moments, those fears echo right in the center of your heart. And after 65, one of the most powerful fears is this: the fear of losing control over life. In the past, life was completely in your hands. You did whatever you wanted. You went wherever you wished. You ate what you liked, made decisions whenever you felt like it. But as the years go by, as the body changes, as life conditions get tougher, that sense of control slowly starts to slip through your fingers. And one day you realize you can't walk as fast as before. You can't recover as quickly as you used to. Sometimes you need help from others to get things done. And that's when this thought enters your mind. Will there come a day when I am completely dependent on someone else? This thought is one of the deepest roots of depression. Because people aren't only afraid of illness or loneliness, they are also deeply afraid of losing control, being bedridden one day, having to move to a nursing home, not being able to handle your daily routines, struggling financially, losing your memory, not even recognizing yourself anymore. These are the quiet and profound fears of old age. And this fear is so powerful that some people spend the final years of their life unhappy just because of this fear. But here's one of life's undeniable truths. We won't always be able to hold on to control. But what's really important is this: losing control does not losing your worth. Losing control does not the end of your life. Sometimes we think our strength only comes from our physical abilities, but true strength lives in the resilience of your soul, in the flexibility of your mind, in your ability to adapt to life. If the day comes when you need help from others, that is not a weakness. It's a natural part of life. Receiving help with love, with understanding, with respect, that is another beautiful side of living. And let's not forget, fear of the future often grows from uncertainty. The best thing you can do is make plans, talk openly with your loved ones, express your wishes and your boundaries, talk with your children, with your family, tell them when and how you would like their support. Share with them what makes you happy, what matters to you, because fear only grows in silence. But when shared, it becomes smaller. And remember this: the future will always be uncertain, but there is still light in your life, still value, still beauty waiting to be lived. Maybe control won't always stay completely in your hands, but the strength of your soul, your love for life, and your connection with people, those will always belong to you. And sometimes, the most beautiful kind of control is the ability to accept life exactly as it is. Life sometimes changes quietly. You don't notice it in the mornings. Days go by, months pass, and one day when you look back, you realize that you're standing far away from the person you used to be. Depression after 65? That's exactly how it comes. Silently, without warning, without anyone noticing. But slowly, little by little, it starts to empty certain places within your heart. Everything we talked about here today, maybe it exists in your life too. Maybe you've already felt it. Maybe you've sat quietly with these silent emotions from time to time, losing your sense of purpose, struggling with loneliness, being distant from family, feeling tired from health problems, and being left alone with fears about the future. All of these are natural parts of being human, of walking through life, and experiencing them doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less, it doesn't make you fragile. On the contrary, it makes you more real, more human, and ultimately stronger. Because the greatest strength is being able to stand up despite everything, is being able to smile despite everything, and most importantly, is being able to remember your worth, even in those moments when you feel completely alone. Remember, there are people in this world who understand you, who share your feelings, who have walked similar paths. You are not as alone as you think, and let this video be a small reminder of that. If even one thing we talked about today touched your heart, if you have experienced anything similar in your life, please share it with us in the comments. Your story is valuable, your voice matters, and don't forget, even a single word from you can touch someone else's life. If you like this video, don't forget to click the like button. And if you would like to see more videos like this, feel free to subscribe to our channel, because here, it's not just about information, it's about lives, stories, real feelings. Take good care of yourself. And always remember, no matter your age, your life still matters. You still matter.